the process of mystic power. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Thus consciously engaged in devotional service, in the association of devotees, a person gains distaste for sense gratification, both in this world and in the next, by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind. Purport. In all scriptures, people are encouraged to act in a pious way so that they can enjoy sense gratification not only in this life but also in the next. For example, one is promised promotion to the heavenly kingdom of higher planets by pious fruitive activities. But a devotee in the association of devotees prefers to contemplate the activities of the Lord, how He has created this universe, how He is maintaining it, how the creation dissolves, and how in the spiritual kingdom the Lord's pastimes are going on. There are full literatures describing these activities of the Lord, especially Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Samhita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. The sincere devotee who associates with devotees gets the opportunity to hear and contemplate the subject of the pastimes of the Lord. And the result is that he feels distaste for so called happiness in this or that world, in heaven, or on other planets. The devotees are simply interested in being transferred to the personal association of the Lord. They have no more attraction for temporary so called happiness. Once again, the devotees are simply interested in being transferred to the personal association of the Lord. They have no attraction for temporary so called happiness. That is the position of one who is Yoga Yukta. One who is fixed in mystic power is not disturbed by the allurement of this world or that world. He is interested in the matters of spiritual understanding or the spiritual situation. This sublime situation is very easily attained by the easiest process, Bhakti Yoga. Riju Bhir Yoga Margai. A very suitable word used here is Riju Bhir or very easy. There are different processes of Yoga Marg, attaining yoga perfection. But this process, devotional service to the Lord, is the easiest. Not only is it the easiest process, but the result is sublime. Everyone should therefore try to take this process of Krishna consciousness and reach the highest perfection of life. Once again, we read the translation. Thus, constantly engaged in devotional service in the association of devotees, a person gains this taste for sense gratification, both in this world and in the next, by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind. So this is continuing the teachings of Kapila Muni to Devahuti. The chapter name is called The Glories of Devotional Service. And specifically, these verses that is going on past 7 to 10 days are very glorious and very famous also. So, from the translation, we can see how is it possible for a person to gain distaste for sense gratification. And it is said by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. This verse is a continuation from previous verse. Previous verse is one of the most famous verses, Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Samvido. Satam means those who are pure, and like we say, Satsang. So Sat means those who are on the path of devotional service. So Satam Prasangam, when we associate with pure devotees, Satam Prasangam, Kapila Muni says, uh, Mama Virya Samvido. Samvad is conversation. Mama Virya Samvido is they are very potent. They are um, um, surcharged with the spiritual potency when it is discussed. And then the last line of the previous verse, it says, Shraddha Ratir Bhaktir. Let us go back to that verse once. Shraddha Ratir Bhaktir Anukramishati. Krama means step by step. Step by step. Anukramishati means step by step these stages comes. The first stage that comes is Shraddha will come. Then the second stage that will come is Rati, attachment to Krishna will come. And the third stage that will come will be Bhakti or pure devotional service. Shuddha Bhakti will come. All these three are the effects of Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Samvido. When devotees come and discuss about Krishna, faith, attachment, and pure devotional service will arise. Very interestingly, it is mentioned, Rupa Goswami describes there are stages in the path from Shraddha to Sadhu Sangha to Bhajana Kriya to Anartha Nivriti, then to Ruchi, Ashakti, and then there is Bhava and Prema. Based on this verse, so Rupa Goswami gave further division and made it into 9 stages. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes 4 stages, those 9. And he said there is Shraddha, then there is Ashakti, then there is Bhava, and there is Prema. And this verse also describes on a similar line. And Rupa Goswami further divided between these 2 stages and added many more stages. There is Sadhu Sangha, there is Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivriti, Ruchi. So this verse says from Shraddha to Rati to Bhakti, step by step one will come to this process. And this glories, the glories of hearing about Krishna in association of Satam, pure devotees, is further elaborated here. Once that happens, then a person gains this taste for sense gratification. Again, the first line is the same. Thus, constantly engage in devotional service and association of devotees. A person gains this taste for sense gratification both in this world and in the next by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. And this is how one is able to control the mind. Somehow or other, it is recommended that one should think about Krishna, but thinking about Krishna is actually a very advanced platform. It is described by Rupa Goswami. In the beginning stages of devotional service, the main process is hearing. And in the advanced stages of devotional service, the main process is remembering. We cannot remember unless the mind is purified. And that's why through hearing about Krishna, we remain Krishna conscious. Like we chant also, but we chant maybe 2 hours. Maybe some devotee chant more or them chant more. But somehow or other, we want to hear about Krishna very much. And it is also said in the previous verse, mm, how potent is the hearing about Krishna is dependent upon in what association Krishna Katha is heard. Like the example given, one negative example that Prabhupada gives is when we hear Krishna Katha from Mayavadis, then it is like milk touched by the serpent. So the same Krishna Katha is contaminated. So how pure the Krishna Katha is dependent upon who is speaking Krishna Katha. Another example that is given about, I mean, Krishna Katha is pure, but at the same time, there is lot of emphasis on hearing from pure devotees also. Prabhupada would repeatedly say, we can only pure devotees can give us Krishna, because in our forgetful state, we don't have any, I mean, I'm talking about myself, we don't have any attraction for Krishna. So to develop attraction for Krishna, we have to hear from devotees who are very attracted to Krishna. Because when a devotee who is very attracted to Krishna, when they speak Krishna Katha, their bhav is added to Krishna Katha, their own Shraddha, their own experience. So when they describe, it is very enlivening. One example from Bhagavatam of how it's important to hear Krishna Katha from pure devotees is Sukadev Goswami itself. And the second verse says that when Shrimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Sukadev Goswami, it became more sweeter, just like the touch of a parrot, because Sukadev Goswami added his own bhav. And likewise, um, um, one time I remember I was in one of the yatra, Vrindavan yatra, by my spiritual master, and he spoke the same Govardhan pastime for 3 hours. And I was sitting with another brahmachari. We both became good friends in the yatra. So after the class is over, he said, "I'm coming to this yatra for maybe 15 years. Every year I hear the same pastime of Giriraj. And every year when it comes from Maharaj, it feels like newer and newer and fresher and fresher." So that's because one thing is the pastime itself, and one thing is the divinity that pastime carries when it is spoken by the pure devotees of the Lord. So when pure devotees speak, we will see like the pastime comes to life. That's why it's very important to hear from pure devotees. Prabhupada also says association means the Shraddha or the bhav is actually getting transferred. When we hear from devotees, their bhav comes to us. So it is those. Now, one very good example of hearing Krishna's pastime is from Shrimad Bhagavatam. It is said that somehow or other, we have to keep hearing about Krishna, whether it is pure devotees of Krishna, whether it is how Krishna is creating through his pores, so many universes comes out, or whether it is Krishna's pastimes from the 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. We can see how attractive, like Srimad Bhagavatam is said as Purana Amalam. It is the topmost Purana because when it was spoken by Sukadev Goswami, Krishna becomes very attractive. And how much we will be able to absorb is also dependent upon our uh, adhikar also, our absorption level also. Shrimad Bhagavatam will remain the same, but as we make further progress in our own Krishna consciousness, the same Shrimad Bhagavatam will reveal to us, will become more and more attractive to us. Like recently, I was going through this chapter describing the glories of Krishna's flute, and it was like the way Sukadev Goswami describes it is so attractive. And I was thinking, if I have to say describe about glorifying the flute of Krishna, then what can I describe and what can I say about it? But then the same, I'm just trying to explain how the bhav of devotees matters so much for Krishna Katha to become very attractive to us. When the same glories of flute is described by Sukadev Goswami, then it becomes very attractive. Like Sukadev Goswami describes, he is described as the parrot of Srimati Radharani. So naturally, he himself has witnessed and seen all those pastimes. And when he describes them, the way he describes them, it will bring a desire within us that I also want to um, participate in those pastimes. Like Krishna's flute is described as when Krishna and Balaram they went to the forest. Krishna took his flute and he started playing on his flute. And when he started playing on his flute, um, it is described that the gopis of Vrindavan, when they heard the flute song, they were filled with joy, and um, they became so much filled with joy that they started embracing each other. And that is basically like, just like I was recently describing, when there is sankirtan, um, chanting of the holy names, and when there is very nice kirtan going on, then the devotees hearts are filled with love, and the devotees start smiling, and when they meet each other they embrace each other. So in that way the whole environment becomes very spiritually surcharged. And likewise it is described when Krishna played his flute. Recently, we were discussing Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami says Krishna's flute sound comes in the material world in the form of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Whatever effect Krishna's flute sound has, same effect when pure devotees chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in this material world, they have the same effect. So they became so much overwhelmed by love when Krishna flute was played, and then they start describing how the whole world becomes joyful when Krishna played his flute. So examples are given when Krishna plays his flute. The cows, those who are grazing the grass, they cannot graze, they cannot focus on what they are grazing because they just become standstill. Their ear become raised hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, and just become absorbed in hearing the sound of Krishna's flute. And when the calves they are drinking the milk from the udders of a mother cow, the milk is like the cows are so full because of their love for Krishna, and especially when they hear Krishna's flute sound, that the milk is just dropping from their udders without anybody need to milk them. It is said that in Vrindavan, the cows are so blissful that when they walk, the milk just keep flowing on the ground. And that's why the roads are wet because of thousands of cows are moving, and it just milk is flowing, and it's soft and muddy and wet. So when these calves they are drinking the milk, this milk is flowing without even any pressure needed by the calves, and milk is just overflowing because the calf loses their ability to drink, became so absorbed in the flute sound of Krishna that milk started flowing from their mouth. And both mother and cows, they become like stone. It is described when Krishna plays his flute, all the animate object becomes inanimate. And there are many examples given. One example given is the birds. The birds, they like this bhav is very, very attractive actually. The birds, they go and sit on the topmost branch of the tree. They close their eyes with open ears and they sit down like the sages, and they become like stone hard. and they became so absorbed that they let the flute sound of Krishna go into their ears and they cannot do anything. Usually they are like chanchal by nature, flickering by nature, and they just became like so. This Venugi chapter, the gopis describe um, these birds were were great sages in the past life, and that's why they are able to get an opportunity to so much absorb themselves in the flute sound of Krishna. Then there is doe and the deer, the male and female deer. They both come when Krishna plays his flute song. Flute song. They come. They stand in front of Krishna. They become still by nature, and they just keep watching the face of Krishna and again become like stones and just let the flute sound go inside them. And then this Sukadev Goswami describes when the um, rivers, when they hear the flute sound of Krishna, they forget where they have to flow. They become confused. So, and they become agitated by that sound of Krishna's flute. And when they become agitated, they started creating a whirlpool because of that agitation. Then they um, take what they do is they come near the feet of Krishna, especially when Krishna is playing the flute on the bank of Yamuna. Rupa Goswami says, please don't meditate on Krishna playing his flute on the bank of Yamuna if you have any attraction to this world, because if you remember that, especially in the evening, in the night time, Krishna playing flute on the bank of Yamuna, you will forget um, any attraction to this material world. So when he plays the flute, these rivers they become agitated, they become confused, they come and with the hands of their waves, they embrace Krishna. In other words, they just touch the lotus feet of Krishna. But how the bhava of Sukadev Goswami is described with their waves are compared to their hands and they embrace the lotus feet of Krishna. And then, these rivers, they carry lotuses. So they embrace the feet of Krishna and then they offer their lotuses to Krishna. So this is about bhav. It is described in one of the commentary. It is mentioned. This is how a pure devotee is seeing, because their bhav is so attractive that because they have such love for Krishna, a pure devotee sees that everybody has more love for Krishna than themselves. So when they see the Yamuna water touching the feet of Yamuna, and these great devotees, they see, I mean, there are two explanations to it. One explanation is how the bhav of pure devotees sees everything and everyone has unlimited deep love for Krishna. And another aspect is they actually have that love for Krishna. So both angles it can be taken. I'm taking from the angle of a sadhaka perspective because it's more relevant to us. So they see how the river has such love for Krishna. Yamuna Devi has love for Krishna. She embraced the feet of Krishna, and because there are lotus is growing, a pure devotee sees how the river is offering her lotuses to Krishna. And then how the tears are crying, how the trees are crying by hearing the flute sound of Krishna because the sap is flowing onto the ground. And how the mother earth is so ecstatic that the hairs on her body, which is compared to the grass, is standing erect by hearing the flute sound of Krishna. And how the clouds, they have such love for Krishna that when it is sunny day, the clouds go up, they stretch themselves, they cover the sun so to give the shade to Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys, and then they drop some fine sprinkling water to give them with a cooling breeze, a cooling effect to give pleasure to Krishna. So these devotees are seeing how the birds are great sages, how the peacocks, they become mad. So they stretch, the male peacocks, they stretch their fangs. They began to dance, and when Krishna sounds his flute, then they also become inanimate. Like they cannot focus on their own dancing. When it begins, they can, and then they just absorb hearing the flute sound of Krishna. So they are thinking how the peacocks, the doe and deer, the birds, the clouds, the trees, Mother Earth, Yamuna, and how Govardhan is the best among all the devotees, how they all have such love for Krishna that we don't have. So I was just thinking the glories of hearing Krishna Katha. And Srimad Bhagavatam is described as Purana Amalam, the way Sukadev Goswami, I mean, first of all, the portion of Sukadev Goswami. Second, it is said how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was attracted to Srimad Bhagavatam, how all the pure devotees are have such attraction of Srimad Bhagavatam, and how Srimad Bhagavatam describe these pastimes of the Lord. Every verse has lot of bhav in it, and this is what will make Krishna attractive to us, because in our conditioned state we have completely forgotten about Krishna, and we have become very much absorbed with the activities of this world, and we have acquired so many material desires. The mind has become so impure. Prabhupada says this is, Prabhupada compares, he says lust and greed, he compares to one has attachment to lust and greed, and it will take some time to come out of this foreign nature, because this is foreign to us, because this is not natural to the soul. So soul needs to become attracted to Krishna, and soul will become attracted to Krishna. For that, the soul needs to hear about Krishna, and when we hear about Krishna, then naturally we feel like, oh, this is very attractive, this is very attractive, this is very attractive. And then we consciously may compare the activities of spiritual world, the activities of Vrindavan, to activities of this world. And naturally the mind, that's how the mind, and here it says the mind becomes trained, and that's how the mind can logically compare and then say, well, this is a better place to be in than where I am living. So I want to be more attracted to this place. And these two verses of Kapila Muni is describing Satam Prasanga Mama Virya Samvido. When Krishna Katha is heard in association of pure devotees of the Lord, Krishna becomes very, very attractive. And through that hearing about Krishna, faith will develop, and then attachment will develop. And it will be so nice if we become attached to this material world. And Prabhupada would say, we cannot become detached from this. We can become detached from this material world to the extent we become attached to Krishna. This simultaneously happens. But if you're not attached to Krishna, how can we become detached to material world? That struggle for neti will continue. The struggle for, no, I don't want this material desire, I don't want this, why this is there, why this there, why this there, it is going to continue forever. And that's why the need is that we want to develop our attachment to Krishna. But how can we develop attachment to Krishna if we don't hear about Krishna? That's why Prabhupada says the first and foremost, in first canto Prabhupada says the first and foremost is Shravanam. And Shravanam has to be heard in association of devotees of the Lord for message to be attractive. Okay, that's all I have. That's all I could think of. If there's some discussion, we can take at this point of time. Okay, very nice. Devotees, thank you all for joining. We can end here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu Vaishnave अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद। Thank you very much. Dhanavad pranams. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Very
Hare
great
Bol.
for the class.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dhanavad pranam.
Thank you.